Yep. So, ladies and gentlemen, honorable guest, thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much for your time. So this is the panel on the illicit sale of technologies to Russia. We have the well-known panelists of Andriy Kostin, the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, Matthew Olsen, the Assistant Attorney General for National Security, U.S. Department of Justice online, and Ladislav Hamran, President of the Eurojust, and Damian Splitters, Conflict Armament Research. As you probably know, and as you very well seen in the margins of this conference, there are a lot of different Western technologies yet available to Russians that they've been using in their weapons to attack the Ukrainian civil infrastructure. Altogether, we've been doing quite a lot of job aimed at lowering the number of these dual-use and critical component high-priority list items available for Russians. I've been told very recently that just over the previous year, the Russians were denied to buy 5 billion worth critical common high-priority list items just because of our common efforts, and that is something, a really good result. Without further ado, I would now pass the floor to Prosecutor General of Ukraine, Mr. Andriy Kostin.
Thank you, Vladislav. Today's speakers have discussed in detail Russia's missile and drone attacks on Ukraine's civilian infrastructure and our people. These attacks are made possible by Russia's use of cutting-edge technologies. In many cases, these technologies have been illegally acquired from foreign sources in violation of sanctions, export controls, and other criminal laws and trade regulations. One of the defining issues of our time is the need to stop the illicit flow of technologies to Russia and to severely limit Russia's ability to carry out its attacks on Ukraine. The events in Ukraine in the past several months has been jarring, with wave after wave of missile attacks killing innocent civilians. On July 8th, Russia destroyed Children's Hospital Ahmadit in Kiev, killing 31 civilians, including children, during the attacks on different objects in Kiev. On September 3, Russia killed more than 50 civilians and injured near 300 others in its attack on educational and medical facilities. On September 4, Russia's attacks on residential buildings in Lviv, not far from Ukraine's border with Poland, killed 7 civilians and injured more than 60 others. These are not isolated occurrences. Russia systematically attacks residential areas, schools, hospitals, hotels, and civilian infrastructure using Iskander missiles, Ha-101 cruise missiles, Kinzhal missiles, Shahed drones, and many other types of weapons, actually presented today by the Deputy Chair of the State Security Service on the slide. These weapons include components produced in China, South Korea, Germany, United Kingdom, Iran, Japan, Netherlands, Switzerland, Taiwan, United States, and many other countries. We have worked closely with the United States, the United Kingdom, European Union, as well as other allies to investigate the cross-border schemes that transfer technologies to Russia in violation of sanctions, export controls, other criminal laws, and trade regulations. I want to use this opportunity to express personal gratitude for extraordinary leadership to Assistant Attorney General Matt Olsen, as well as special thanks to EU Commissioner Didier Reynders and President of Eurojust Ladislav Hamran for their personal dedication to this issue, as evident from the coordination meeting on stopping the illicit flow of sensitive technologies that took place in Eurojust on 13th of July this year. This cooperation already has led to criminal charges for the illegal provision of technologies to Russia, and we are working together with our international partners to aggressively investigate more criminal schemes. Ukraine is immensely grateful for the support of the law enforcement agencies of our international partners, including FBI, Europol. In addition to investigating the illegal transfer of advanced technologies to Russia, it is important for our allies to continue to strengthen their sanctions regime. Russia is constantly adapting to existing sanctions, finding new intermediaries for the acquisition of technologies and parts. Russia, for example, has been rerouting crucial goods through friendly states like China and has ramped up missile and weapons production using foreign parts. It's necessary to block the supply of foreign technologies to Russia through increased sectoral sanctions covering not only state-owned companies, but also organizations and individuals associated with Russian regime and defense sector. It is equally critical to sanction the military and technology companies as well as individuals in third-party states that are involved in such schemes. All these states are well known to all of us. We understand that the race of export and import operations on specific goods by states for whom it was unlikely before sanctions regime was established is one of the potential evidence of their involvement as intermediaries in the supply chain. We all understand that some jurisdictions are also used as an intermediary to ensure financing of such schemes. And it's well known to all of us. And it's critically important to go ahead with our cooperation between US, EU, UK, Ukraine, and maybe to add Japan, Korea to our joint efforts, because as I mentioned, Russia is always inventing new schemes how to overcome sanctions regime. But we are together and we are united in order to not only to prosecute these cases, which many of them are complex and with transnational or transnational element, but also to stop the schemes, stop supply, and then prevent the supply. So this is the aim before us, to prosecute those who already are involved, to show to the others that they will be prosecuted, they will be punished for such crimes. Then to stop schemes, because when we investigate these cases, we understand, we uncover specific schemes which are used in order to establish supply chain to Russia and to other adversary states. And third, of course, to prevent. And these complex measures, together with legislative solutions, should help us to prevent supply of technologies and dual-use products which are later on used by Russia to kill Ukrainian people. Yesterday, during the meeting of member states of Joint Investigation Team, I proposed to set up a new separate JIT focused, or working group of our JIT, focused on investigation of the criminal aspect of evasion or violation of sanctions regime that related to arms supply, complicity, association in commission of the crime of aggression and war crimes. And we would be looking forward to this positive development. We are also grateful for the work of non-governmental actors, including NGOs, investigative journalists, and OSINT experts in compiling information that can be used to strengthen law enforcement investigations or lead to the imposition of sanctions. The schemes used by Russia to illegally acquire advanced technologies, as I mentioned, are complex and transnational. Progress will require concerted efforts of our international partners to combat illegal flow of technologies to Russia. We stand ready to assist in any way possible. Combating the illicit sale of advanced technologies will raise the costs to Russian military sector and will make it more difficult for Russia to replenish its weapons and develop new ones. Our enemy is formidable, but we understand the challenges before us. We must work together with our international partners in order to stop the suffering of Ukrainian people by preventing Russia from illegally acquiring advanced technologies. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Prosecutor Kostin, for your remarks. I would then ask you a question. Given the very recent information on the apparent move of the Iranian ballistic missiles, would you agree that the, let's say, civilized world has to act more proactively in order to, prevent any move of the Western technologies and tools used to make the weapons from access of these, let's say, terrorist like regimes like Russia, like Iran, like some other countries?
Thank you for this question, because I think that the answer is absolutely clear. Of course, yes. Of course, the world should be much more proactive and should follow the Ukrainian speed of, not of reaction on the existing problems, but Ukrainian speed of how we proactively try to challenge or to try to answer on the issues, on the questions we have. And this is very important because, as I mentioned, Russia and other adversaries, and actually other countries who are either just earn money, we all understand this is also about money. It's not that some country is ready, let's help Russian regime. No. It's about money. It's about some political influence in the future. Some countries which were, like not very well known before, now they think that they have some international credibility because they are involved in a very big, important expert operations. And one of the questions that stay before us, and you mentioned, it's once again, it's a very philosophic question. It's what is more important for the civilized world, economic interest / money, or rule of law / legal response on criminal activity which could save lives of Ukrainian civilians. And we need, I think, first of all, to admit that not in all instances the civilized world, some countries, or business which operates in these countries are choosing law. In many instances, they are choosing money. And we need to be open about this. And we need to present arguments that if someone from your business is just want to earn money because the scheme proposed by Russia is not violating, let's say, literally violating the new regulations or on sanctions regime, because their lawyers, I'm sorry to you to say about lawyers, invented new scheme how to overlap or circumvent, then we will appear in a situation when this economic interest could lead to a problem to the whole civilized world. Because when Ukraine is leading the fight against floating of illicit technologies throughout the world to protect Ukrainian people from new missile and drone attacks, we, Ukraine, are also helping the other countries, because these types of weaponry could be easily used by terrorist organizations. We are not only talking about big cruise missiles, we are talking also about small drones. And these type of weapons could be used by terrorists, national, local, or international, against any other nation or even local community. That's why it's our joint task, it's our joint effort to combat it on international level, because it's our common threat. Now in time of war, our enemy is more concentrated to use these technologies to produce lethal weapons. Later on, the same chains, the same schemes will be used to feed terrorist organizations with very modern weaponry, which will kill civilians in the other parts of the world. That's why my answer is yes.
Thank you so much, Prosecutor General Kostin. And now let's turn to Assistant Prosecutor General Matt Olsen. Matt Olsen, good morning. How are you doing?
Good morning, Vlad.
Yep. So again, we know that you've been doing this job for some very specific long time period. We've heard about this strike force, which showed a lot of results battling and combating the threat of the US technologies being available to the Russia and some other countries. So now please do deliver your speech, and in your speech I would rather ask you to answer one question which I address to you right now. The question is, what are the challenges in preventing the US-made parts being available for the Russian? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vlad, and thank you to you all for inviting me here to speak today on this extremely important topic, and to allow me the opportunity to join you remotely from our offices at the Department of Justice in Washington, D.C. I'm really, truly honored to be on this panel with Prosecutor General Kostin and Eurojust President Hamran, our partners in this effort. Their commitment to this issue, and the Prosecutor General and I have had a number of opportunities to speak about this, but their commitment to this work is unmatched. And I thank both the Prosecutor General and President Hamran for your leadership on this effort. And I will say we are continued to be committed here in Washington, D.C., and inspired by the plight of the Ukrainian people, and to doing everything we can to support you in your efforts today. So, Vlad, when it comes to the challenge around U.S. manufactured semiconductor technology and other types of microelectronics going to Russia, we are really laser focused here, and have been for the past couple years, on preventing that technology from getting into the hands of Russia, where it is obviously used to support their military effort and the unlawful and unjust invasion of Ukraine. Microelectronics, of course, are virtually in all of the technologies that surround us. And we know that Russia, other adversaries as well, but Russia in particular, relies on the foreign supply of these technologies to wage its war. It's the technology that Russia needs to enable unmanned aerial vehicles, weapon systems, advanced communication systems, all of the pieces and all of the types of hardware used in its warfare. And Russia, we also know, cannot legally obtain enough of these components to fuel its war effort. It doesn't have the manufacturing capability inside of Russia to make these products. And the US government and our allies have imposed tight export restrictions following the 2022 invasion of Ukraine. So what is Russia doing? Of course, as the Prosecutor General said, it is now trying to get around these restrictions, to skirt these laws by using third-party intermediaries and international transshipment points to disguise the fact that these are parts that are going to Russia. So you asked, Vlad, what are some of the challenges that we face in this effort to stop the flow of sensitive technologies, particularly microelectronics, to Russia? And I would say one challenge, I'll identify two, but the first one that comes to mind is how ubiquitous microelectronics are. They're everywhere. They are in virtually all of the technologies that surround us, and ensuring that we have a steady supply is a natural priority for all of us, for the United States and our allies. So we don't want to and can't cut off our supply of these products. So just the fact that they are so ubiquitous makes this a challenge. But the second challenge, and again, the Prosecutor General mentioned this, is the use of shell companies and transshipment points to evade our controls and sanctions. Prosecutor General, I think you jokingly talked about the role that lawyers play, and as a lawyer, I will tell you I do not take offense at that remark. We know that there are a number of bad actors, lawyers, business people, intelligence officers. These are the individuals who are helping to establish these illicit mechanisms, these illicit and illegal pathways that are allowing Russia to obtain these products. These malign actors are setting up front companies around the world, and these front companies then illegally funnel microelectronics into Russia to the end users there, where they end up in the Russian military. So these are two of the challenges that we're facing. And let me now just spend a couple of moments, please, if I may, talking about the efforts that we are undertaking here at the Justice Department and in the United States to address these challenges. I think a couple years ago, following the invasion of Ukraine, we knew that we needed a different approach to keep sensitive technologies out of the hands of Russia and other foreign adversary states like Iran and China. So in February of 2023, we joined with our partners at the Department of Commerce, and we created what we call a disruptive technology strike force. This strike force is an enforcement effort, first and foremost. It brings together the key agencies from across the US federal government, and we are focused on one common goal, that is keeping the technology, keeping sensitive technologies out of the hands of those who would use those technologies to engage in warfare or commit human rights abuses. So I lead part of that effort with at the Department of Justice National Security Division, and my partner is at the Commerce's Bureau of Industry and Security. And then we're joined in this effort by three federal law enforcement agencies, which includes the Federal Bureau of Investigation. As I mentioned, our work at the Strike Force is an enforcement effort first and foremost. We have stood up as part of this effort 17 enforcement teams around the United States with the goal of pursuing criminal charges involving the sale of illegal critical technology to our adversaries. And we've been focused on, in particular, microelectronics. I think out of the 20 criminal cases that the Strike Force has publicly announced over the past year or so, 1/4, 5 of those cases involve the transfer of microelectronics to Russia and other adversaries. That's more than any other type of technology. One really, I think, important example of our efforts is just in July of this year, a court here in the United States sentenced a Russian national who had been arrested to 3 years in prison. He was found guilty of overseeing an illegal procurement network that was used to smuggle U.S. manufactured microelectronics to Russian end users. And they had set up, in that case, a company in Hong Kong and operated multiple shell companies to conceal the ultimate destination of Russia for their products. I would say, along with the enforcement work we're doing here, Vlad, that we also are focused on the partnerships, and that those are a key part of our effort. And I'll just touch on those because we work really closely with the private sector. This includes having outreach to those companies in the United States who are actually good actors and can help us understand with the parts that they're manufacturing, how to keep them out of the hands of Russia and other bad actors. And it's really important to emphasize the important role that the business community plays here. They make decisions every day about who they do business with, and we are making it clear that we will hold them responsible for those decisions if they make the wrong ones. We've also focused on strengthening our international partnerships. Our adversaries' efforts to obtain sensitive technologies across the globe demands an international response. And I really appreciate, Mr. Prosecutor General, your last answer on the importance of being proactive internationally, because we can't do this one country or two countries or three countries together. We need an international effort that is proactive in nature, that understands the nature of this threat and works together to defeat this network, this illicit network that Russia has established to obtain these parts. So we are committed to continuing to build out these international partnerships, and I look forward to seeing you shortly, Mr. Prosecutor General, here in the United States to continue our conversations and work in that regard. So thank you so much again to Vlad and to the organizers of this conference for allowing me to speak. I truly appreciate this opportunity and look forward to continuing to work with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Matt. I know you gotta go, but we know that Nate is gonna stay with us. So thank you again for all of your efforts and your participation. I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much. And let's turn now to Mr. Ladislav Hamran, President of the Eurojust. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting Eurojust to this panel, because I do believe that combating the illicit sale of technologies is not only timely, relevant, but also critical to ensure peace and prosperity for Ukraine and other nations. Obviously, we are an operational agency, and my main task would be to share some positive developments. Actually, I would like to share with you a case which was supported by Eurojust, demonstrating that indeed there are encouraging developments, but also some lessons learned and gaps which we have to address. So therefore, I will devote my second part to those possible lessons learned and issues for remedy. So first of all, I would like to set the scene by saying that EU takes these efforts very seriously, and the EU rolled out its 14th sanctions package. Today there are now 675 entities to which exporters are not allowed to supply goods due to the risk of diversion for military purposes. But you know, we also have to make sure that these sanctions are also enforced, that they do not remain purely and solely on paper, but they actually are respected and ensured and enforced. And here, a couple of months ago, the European Commission started the work in this regard, and we realized that there is a legislative gap between EU countries, because the enforcement or circumvention of sanction was not treated in all member states equally. So we discovered that in some countries, indeed, such a violation may constitute a crime, and therefore it's punishable. But in some countries, it was just an administrative offense, and obviously treated outside of the criminal field. So therefore in May the EU took another big step by making it a criminal offense to violate EU sanctions in all member states. And now EU member states have a legislative period to make sure that this regulation is enforced and implemented in all EU member states. So this is something very practical and was definitely a practical result of our shared efforts to make sure that justice is done also in this area. Now, speaking about a real case, I would like to, and also to demonstrate that this enforcement is real. Eurojust was approached in 2023 to support a case which involved 5 countries, the Netherlands, Germany, Latvia, Lithuania, and Canada. And as I mentioned, it started in 2023, when Dutch authorities uncovered a network of companies used to circumvent the export ban to Russia. And these businesses centered around a Dutch trading company established in 2017 for the import, export, and sales of electrotechnical and laboratory equipment. And during a joint action day last January, 3 suspects were arrested and 14 locations were searched. These individuals are now suspected of being part of the international smuggling ring, exporting goods that could be used also for military purposes. This operation also led to the seizure of company records, bank accounts, but also communication tools. And this operation only confirmed the importance of international cooperation, the importance of partnership, but also importance of coordination by a player like Eurojust, which actually brings together all players and ensure timely communication and coordination between different actors. It's also revealed how actually important the institutional cooperation is. Because the case started with information exchange between intelligence authorities, police authorities, custom authorities, authorities responsible for certification of these goods, the involvement of the timely involvement of judicial authorities was also seen as essential. Because why it's essential? Because we don't want to end with exchanging intelligence or police information. For bringing people to justice, we need to comply with different evidentiary obligations, which are also respecting the human rights in different countries, and therefore they are admissible in different courts. Therefore, the early involvement of judicial authorities in this type of cases is really essential. So all this is done and is good, but also I have to say that these cases are not easy at all. First of all, it's not easy to prevent them, it's not easy to detect them, and also the repression is not without problems. We organized, and when I say we, Ukraine, US, and Eurojust organized on 12th of July an international conference, to my knowledge the first international conference about the subject, where we could discuss all lessons learned, but also difficulties, challenges, problems, and opportunities this crime area offers. And as it was mentioned by Mr. Kostin, the list of countries which are actually producing technology which might have dual use or may have purely military use is already quite telling. We as prosecutors, we depend on cooperation with these countries. And by the list which you shared, by default they are countries which will never cooperate with us. Because they rather prefer the economical interest or geopolitical interest, and the geopolitical interest or economical interest prevails over core values like justice is for civilized society. So international cooperation with different than like-minded countries remains a challenge. And they may lead to a non-execution of letters of requests or partial executions or simply a refusal of cooperation. Another big challenge which is ahead of us is lack of national expertise or awareness how important this issue is. So we at Eurojust, we also want to raise awareness how important this issue is, and to ensure that all national authorities have training, capacity building, and enough capacities to be allocated to these issues. What to say more? I think that I covered all the aspects. And by finalizing, I would like to also say that Eurojust will remain committed to ensure that those national authorities which have cases are supported, and our support involves financial support, logistical support, analytical support, and whatever support national authorities may need in the fight against this type of criminality. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Hamran. I have a question for you, though. You probably have seen the, the parts of the missiles and the drones. So it's supposed that probably we all together have been doing a little bit, not enough, to stop Russians from producing the weapons. So, and you've touched upon this partly in your speech, but what else should we all doing in order to make it even more difficult for Russians to get the parts from the EU member states?
As I hinted in my first intervention, and also I fully agree with Mr. Kostin, we see here a conflict or clashes between economical interest, geopolitical interest, and the core values of civilized societies. And we also have to ensure that we don't only speak about these issues, but we turn all these words to real actions. And so far, with other partners, I can only confirm the true commitment and dedication and devotion to the core of justice. But we are only covering certain part of the world, and this remains and will remain a big challenge. But we have to also make sure everything what we can on political, diplomatical, economical stages to ensure that we cover more and more countries and involve them to the civilized world and ensure that justice is done everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, let us turn to Mr. Damien Splitters, the Chief of Conflict Armament Research. Again, I'm happy to say that I've been cooperating with the CAR for, I guess, a year now at least, as well as many other Ukrainian institutions and agencies, including the forensic institutions. So the guys have been doing a lot of tracing of the items, how exactly they've been acquired by Russian manufacturers. Again, Damien, the floor is yours, and the question is also awaiting for you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Vlad. All right. It is hot in here. I don't know about you. It is my honor to be part of this very important conference. Thank you so much for the invitation to be among those very distinguished speakers. It is also my responsibility to be the last speakers in the last panel of a very long day, so I will try to keep it interesting for you. We will start by a quick show of hand, if you want. Who among you has heard about conflict armament research before? Can you raise your hand if you have? All right, this is great. If you haven't heard about us,
We all know.
you know me. If you haven't heard about us, that's okay. Senator Johnson hasn't heard about us neither, and he was part of a hearing yesterday questioning the 4 major US manufacturers of chips that have been found in Russian, Iranian, and North Korean weapons. We are but a very small cog in the very large investigation, prosecution machine, and we're very grateful to all our international partners, and especially to our Ukrainian partners, to be able and to have the honor to contribute to their efforts to bring the responsible people to justice. So conflict armament research, what is that? Conflict armament research is an organization, an independent organization that specializes in the investigation of the diversion of components and of commodities in general in conflict areas. what do? We send people to conflict areas all around the world, in Ukraine especially today, to work with defense and security forces operating in those conflict zones. So we send physically people to access whatever is being recovered from the conflict, and to try to identify and document those illicit weapons, ammunition, components, and precursor materials. And then what do we do with that? We try to trace that. So we work together with industry to try to understand how it got there, and provide that information to governments and industry, provide them with verified evidence on patterns of illicit supply, production, and procurement, because we think that effective policy, effective business decisions have to be based on evidence. So we are believers, and this image is intended to show that in a credo that is made of 4 tenets, the 4 T's: tracking items in the field, tracing them with manufacturers, triangulation of responses, and trade mapping. The triangulation is very important in this case for the semiconductors, because we're very aware that in the semiconductor industry, there's very little control and visibility over the supply chain going down the line after the manufacturer. So we do mass tracing. So we send trace requests, what we call trace requests, to manufacturers. We receive a lot of responses. And in general, it looks like a list of dozens of companies that have received a certain batch of components that we have found in the weapons that you can see there. When the manufacturers have this list ready, for them it looks like a list of dozens of other entities and distributors, and they have no idea which one is responsible for the diversion. When we receive a list from every single manufacturer like this, there's a lot of triangulation that we can do. A lot of times, and that's something that the general public sometimes doesn't understand, a lot of those shipments have been made before 2022 as well. But from our investigations, we have found that Russian customers that have purchased components before 22, before the full-scale invasion, continue now to be the customers of those manufacturers, but through third parties, through distributors in third countries. So it's very important for us to establish the historical customers to identify them, and then we do very targeted trade mapping by looking at what their business looked like after 2022. So this is, in a sense, in a nutshell, the methodology that we have been working on in Ukraine, but also in other conflicts. What we have found here, and this should be a surprise for no one else, are, and by the way, I wanted to say first that everything we see has a meaning. We believe that everything we see has a meaning. So the components that you see there, the marks that you see there mean something. Everything there means something, even when they are removed. So the removal of marks is something that we are starting to see now, and it shows an intent. It shows that the tracing and the investigation has had an effect, and that the parties involved in their diversion are trying to hinder this investigation. But what we have found, and should be a surprise for no one now, is that in Russian weapons, and this is a Rastopersh, so an X-101 cruise missile that a lot of other speakers have talked about today, we've found a lot of non-Russian companies, more than 130. A lot of components model, more than 700. Manufacturing date ranging from 2007 to 2024, but we've seen stockpiling efforts. So a lot of those components actually date from before the invasion. It doesn't mean that it's not important to document and trace them, on the contrary, but it means that we need to understand that Russia has had the intent to stockpile on those components to mitigate the effect of sanctions and export control. And that this effort that Ukraine and partners are developing needs to be in the long haul to try to stop those responsible for the stockpiling and their diversion. When looking at the companies, and we look only at where they are headquartered, the semiconductor industry is a very global industry in nature. We're looking at where they are headquartered because this is where we will send our trace requests. We see that a little bit more than half of them are based in the US, 20% in Europe, 28% in Asia. When we look at Iranian weapons, and you have one there on the table, the Shahad 136, we have found more than 100 non-Iranian companies, more than 400 component models, manufacturing date ranging from 2005 to 2023, But more recent acquisition in terms of trend, ranging from 2020 to 2023, 62% US-based companies, 14% Europe, 21% Asia. And then this year, we've been seeing the use of weapons manufactured in North Korea, also in Ukraine, unfortunately. We have identified so far 26 different non-DPRK companies, 50 different component models, manufacturing date ranging from 2004 to 2023, but again, more recent acquisition ranging from 2021 to 2023. 75% of those companies based in the US, 16% Europe, 9% Asia. And again, you have an example, a specimen there on the table brought by our esteemed Ukrainian colleagues who have done a tremendous job recovering those things and looking into them. So what we see there is a pattern. We see that those countries are consistently, they need non-domestic components. And again, that should be no surprise for anyone. They have not developed, as much as the US, Europe, and certain countries in Asia, their own domestic semiconductor industry. So, and you'll see that in my conclusion, but this is both a curse and a blessing. The curse is that we have our own technologies used against our own interest. The blessing is that we can do something about it if we work together. So that's a question that's been asked previously in the panel, and that's something I like to talk about. Forgive me, I just need to drink something because it's really hot. So you see the methodology there on the left, documentation, tracing, triangulation, train mapping, but that's the reaction, that's reactive. The components have already been diverted, they've already been used in weapons. What can we do to stop Russia and their partners from acquiring those components and using them? We try to do that by doing field monitoring. Very important to us to continue to document those components in weapon systems being used over and over again in Ukraine, because we could see changes in what is being used, changes in how it's being acquired, and how Russia and their partners have tried to adapt to current sanctions and export control. So very important to continue that field monitoring. We try to identify potential alternatives to those components. If tomorrow a certain chain of acquisition would be cut, what would Russia try to acquire to replace it with? Then go to those manufacturers, do outreach to them, and tell them your product might be next. Be on the lookout, be careful. So be one step ahead. And then have this positive feedback loop going on. We have companies we've worked with that have been impacted by the diversion of their product. And the sole fact that we've tried to trace something with them becomes a red flag for them. We've got a company based in the US that came to us saying, well, you traced something with us last month, and now we've got a new company that we don't know about, trying to acquire the exact same model. They're not sanctioned, they're not listed anywhere. For us, it would be a green light to go ahead with the sale. We told them, look, it looks like that company has been involved in moving millions of dollars of components to a sanctioned company in Russia after they got sanctioned. They decided to not go ahead with that deal, and they later told me that this was a third of their yearly income to not go ahead with that deal. 2 months after that, that company got sanctioned. So they were right to do that. So that positive feedback loop is what we're trying to get in place with those manufacturers, to try to work with them and identify down the line which companies, which entities are responsible for the diversion. So the lessons we've got from the past years that we've worked with our Ukrainian colleagues is that, again, continued reliance on non-domestic components, that's both a blessing and a curse, as I said. We see progressive change in mentality when it comes to tracing. A lot of those big names and companies, if I ask you now today to name one major semiconductor manufacturer, probably everyone here could name one, right? But if I ask you to name one distributor, one major distributor of those semiconductors, I don't think anyone here, except perhaps our colleagues investigating those cases, would be able to name them. Those big manufacturers, their mentality, and that begins to change, is to say, look, we are moving trillions of products that you see everywhere in your life, everywhere. They are in this screen, they are in this mic, they are in your phone. how can we possibly trace them? They don't have enough unique mark on them to allow for tracing. And we've showed them again and again that it is possible to trace them. It's possible to identify the problematic entities. It's possible to get them sanctioned and listed. So there's a progressive change in mentality, and we're very happy to see that. But there's still a lot of red flags being missed. A lot of those companies are very happy with automatized screening for entities of concern. And we've seen cases where a manufacturer has been selling their components to what they thought were a car manufacturer, but was in fact a small freight forwarder based in Hong Kong, just because they had the same name as that car manufacturer. We had to tell them, look, it's not a car manufacturer, and they just didn't know. A lot of red flags being missed also. What we're trying to be careful as well, and that's a lesson for us, is looking at trade data without looking at what we see in the field and without the tracing. Correlation is not causation. It's not because there are 10 times more washing machines being sold to Russia that Russia is taking chips from washing machines to put them in missiles. It does not happen. That trope about washing machines and the trope about sanctions don't work because it's a whack-a-mole game, I want those two things to die soon. I'm so tired of hearing that every time I speak about it. The importance of monitoring for change, again, big lesson for us to assess the effectiveness of sanction. How can you possibly know whether your sanctions and export control are effective if you do not open up those weapon systems and look for components and how they change and how they are being replaced? And then what we saw as well is overlap in acquisition trends between Russia, Iran, and the DPRK, especially when it comes, for example, to the common high priority list. It's very important for partners to speak the same language. It's very important to know whether they target the right thing. It is sometimes we need to keep the balance very. It could be a backfiring. It could be dangerous if you think that you've got everything covered by a list, and sometimes that's the danger. There needs to be, again, importance of monitoring for changes, and then the importance of the distributors. This graph shows you. So we've got 1,500 trace requests sent, about 40% response. In those responses, we've got a top 5 distributors, and the orange one is the remaining one. So most of the distributors you see there are 5 companies, 4 of them based in the US. But again, everyone talks about the manufacturers, no one talks about the distributors. Those distributors also have responsibilities. They also hold information that's very important, and they are closer to the diversion point than the manufacturers are. So very important to keep that in mind, at least for investigators like us. And then lastly, this is the result of the work and the partnership we've had with our Ukrainian friends and partners here. The map there shows you every entity of interest that we've identified through our investigation, 262 of them. What's different from the lists and that BIS puts out, or the sanctions that OFAC or the EU Commission puts out, is that we are identifying companies that are not yet sanctioned, companies of interest, companies that are one way or another possibly linked to the diversion of components that we have effectively found in weapon systems. So we have a high threshold of evidence because every single case is linked to a physical component that we have seen ourselves by dismantling with our Ukrainian partners those weapons that you see on the table. And then as a vindication of this kind of work, what we see there is subsequently more than 35% of those companies were then sanctioned by OFAC, listed by BIS, or sanctioned by the EU Commission. So very important there for us to be able to continue this work. And then lastly, there's also a support that we provide to ongoing investigations and prosecutions. Perhaps you've heard of this case of a Brooklyn resident and a Canadian national that pleaded guilty to multi-million-dollar export control scheme, SH Brothers. We are working very closely with our partners at the Eastern District, New York, attorney's office there from the Department of Justice in the US. And we're able to support some of their efforts, and we're very grateful for that. Some of it, as you see, results in very impactful cases. So I will leave you with that. Again, very privileged to be part of this very important conference. Thank you for the invitation again.
Thank you so much. Right, dear Damien, thank you so much for this presentation. I really, really loved it. And the question which goes for you is, I mean, given the presence of absolutely different stakeholders in here, let's say you want them to pass a couple of new rules on the spread of the microelectronics, what these rules would be. Just tell us what to do. Thank you.
You're giving me too much responsibility there, Vlad. Again, we're just a small cog in this big machine, very privileged to be part of it. What we think should be supported more is this triangle of work between authorities, and be it European authorities, US authorities, and Ukrainian authorities in recovering those items, and then doing this work afterwards on the prosecution, for example, together with industry and with NGOs, non-governmental entities like us, and others, of course. We think that has shown very good results, and we think that should be supported. We think it's very important to also include industry in this. We need them to collaborate. They hold the information. They can change their policies. They can change their business decision. There are many things they can do about this problem, and they are slowly and of course, it's late, but it's better late than never, realizing the responsibility and the role that they can play in this, and I think involving them is the way forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that's the conclusion of our panel. Again, Damien Splitters, Ladislav Hamran, Andrei Kostin, Matthew Olsen, and Vladislav Vasuk. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much, distinguished participants of this discussion. We would like to thank all of you for the last panel of the day and everyone who shared their views, insights, and expertise with us. We hope that this conference will help in bringing effective solution to repeal Russian aggression and inevitably bring the perpetrators to justice. Ми дякуємо усім учасникам останньої панелі нашої конференції і дякуємо усім, хто ділився з нами своїми думками, пропозиціями та експертизою. Ми сподіваємося, що ця конференція допоможе в пошуку ефективних рішень відсічі російської агресії та невідворотнього притягнення винних у воєнних злочинах до відповідальності. So we need to do a few technical things before the closing remark of our conference. And I will probably use this pause to say that this is my first United for Justice Serious conference that I've been holding as a moderator. And the first one was in March in Lviv, 2023, and so much events happens. Since then, so many things have changed, but it's very pleasant for me to see that the energy that the international community invests in bringing Russian war criminals to accountability is still unwavering, and it's very important for millions of Ukrainians, for all of the people of Ukraine who are fighting for justice, who strongly believe in justice, and who is still thinking that justice is one of the things that we need to fight for, and one of the things that we will achieve. Thank you very much for this. So it's time for closing remarks, and I invite Rolf Holmbo, Head of Mission, European Union Advisory Mission, Ukraine.
Dear Excellencies, dear participants, dear colleagues, it is a great pleasure and great honor for me to be here as head of mission for the European Union Advisory Mission in Ukraine. Among such a distinguished company and with such a day of important deliberations, I think we have had a really important day. This conference has addressed something that is really important, namely the deliberate and strategic attempts by Russia to destroy the very basis of civilian life in Ukraine. We feel these effects every single day, living here in Kiev or across Ukraine, when the air alerts go off, when the air alerts go on, when the electricity goes off, or when the bombs and missiles start falling. This is when daily life is disrupted. I think we bring with us certain key conclusions from today that I think are important. I think we have all drawn these conclusions. Firstly, today we have witnessed how the attacks perpetrated by Russia are widespread, systematic, and deliberate. The very scale of the attacks taking place were mentioned by several participants. How they are perpetrated by different military means from various branches of the Russian armed forces. How the targeting information and orders do not always emanate just from inside the military system. It is a Russian system-wide campaign directed directly against the Ukrainian civilian life. Secondly, we have heard and witnessed today how these attacks are interconnected across the various areas of critical infrastructure and beyond. Attacks on the electricity infrastructure, attacks on the gas infrastructure, attacks on water infrastructure. How an attack on one object can have a reverberating impact on other civilian infrastructure, and on the children, and on the women, and on the men that rely upon this infrastructure in their daily lives. We have heard how these attacks affect not just the people working in the hospitals, struck by a missile, or studying in the schools, targeted by a drone, or those harvesting crops in fields that have been scorched by shelling. John Donne once famously wrote, "No man is an island." This is no more true than here. No human, or indeed human community, lives in isolation. Therefore, these attacks have much wider physical and psychological effects on the very fabric of civilian life. That was mentioned by several of our key participants today. Way beyond the physical damage inflicted upon the by the bombing itself. The only possible conclusion we can draw from this string of United for Justice conferences that we are setting up, and we want to thank the Office of the Prosecutor General for this, is that Russia is engaged in a wider strategy to destroy and erase Ukrainian identity, nationality, culture, and indeed presence in Ukraine. And nothing could be more serious than that. The United for Justice conferences are important for several reasons. Firstly, they allow us to arrive at a common understanding in Ukraine and with the international community on the unprecedented nature and scale of the criminal attacks perpetrated by Russia on this country now, and how all the Russian modes of attacks on the environment, on the cultural heritage, on critical infrastructure are weaved into a strategy to destroy and erase exactly that, Ukrainian identity, nationality, culture, and indeed the very presence. I just lost the page. Secondly, these string of United for Justice conferences allow us to put these international crimes firmly on the international agenda and to galvanize the international resolve to be as supportive as we can to the efforts by the Office of the Prosecutor General for the prosecution, for the Security Service of Ukraine and the National Police of Ukraine in the investigations of this huge, unprecedented amount of crimes that has taken place. What is important now is that we all together ensure an operational follow-up to these string of conferences so that we can come together in this support for creating accountability for these crimes. This is important not only for Ukraine that is suffering from all these attacks. It is also important for the international community because it is important for us to create such accountability that we can prevent by international legislation, international legislative practice, that such wide-scale atrocities would happen again in the future. So the operational follow-up to these conferences is really where the real value lies in ensuring accountability for these attacks. In summation, Ukraine has now the heavy but very important responsibility to investigate and prosecute by far the bulk of these crimes over the next coming months and next coming years. We in the EUAM and in the wider ACA and indeed in the wider international community, we stand ready to assist Ukraine in this quest for justice and accountability. We work closely with our American and British colleagues as part of the Atrocity Crimes Advisory Group, ACA. Jointly, we assist Ukraine in the field of international crimes in all its aspects. You have heard from several of my colleagues today, along with other partners from Ukrainian agencies and from our fellow partners in the ACA implementing agencies. I would like to thank the Office of the Prosecutor General and the Prosecutor General Andriy Kostin himself for their tireless efforts in organizing these conferences, in getting the international community together with all the key Ukrainian partners to really put the focus on these issues. It is extremely important. I'm so very happy that EUM could just be a small part in assisting you in this huge task. But rest assured that we, both in EUAM, I'm sure also in ACA and with the implementing partners and with all the other entities working here in Ukraine, that we will do everything we can to help ensure that we find eventually accountability for these crimes committed in Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Mr. Holmberg. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Clara Ovi, Director of Human Rights Council of Europe. She is joining us online.
Thank you so much. And thank you for that introduction. I'm only sorry that I can't be with you today in the beautiful city of Kiev. Dear Prosecutor General, Excellencies, Ministers and distinguished partners, I'm honoured to be able to deliver the closing remarks on behalf of the Council of Europe at this very important high-level conference. First, I'd like to express my gratitude and the gratitude of my colleagues in the Council of Europe to the Office of the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, the key organiser of this event, for our long-standing partnership and close cooperation, including in respect of this conference. Speaking in my capacity as the Director of Human Rights at the Council of Europe, our collective efforts towards ensuring justice for violations of international law have far-reaching human rights implications. It's an important principle of human rights law that there should be no impunity for serious human rights violations and that victims should be provided with redress. And these are important key underlying principles of all the work that you have been engaged in today. Just a few days ago, European Ministers of Justice came together in Vilnius to discuss accountability for the international crimes committed in Ukraine by the Russian Federation. In their declaration, the ministers reiterated their readiness to strengthen international mechanisms to ensure accountability for international crimes, including the crime of aggression, and to enhance the protection of the rights of victims. Building on the Reykjavik summit of heads of state and government of the Council of Europe, the established International Register of Damage for Ukraine, and the Riga principles that they themselves adopted a year ago, the ministers commended the process of Ukraine's ratification of the Rome Statute as an important step forward for international justice. They strongly supported the investigations of the International Criminal Court aimed at bringing to justice perpetrators of international crimes committed on the territory of Ukraine. They reaffirmed the necessity of establishing an effective special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine to deliver justice by holding accountable those who bear the greatest responsibility. They welcomed the contributions of the Council of Europe and the European Union to the consultations within the core group on establishing such a special tribunal, including preparation and presentation of a draft agreement and statutory documents for its establishment. And they reaffirmed the critical importance that any future proceedings of an established special tribunal should adhere to applicable international law based on the principles of the European Convention on Human Rights and the case law of the European Court of Human Rights. A particular emphasis should, of course, be on the right to a fair trial. Emphasizing the indisputable advantages of in-person trials, the ministers also acknowledged that under certain conditions and where the applicable law so permits, and with full respect to full trial guarantees, procedural steps in absentia in the prosecution of international crimes may serve the interests of justice. At the conference here today, you have discussed a number of these issues in depth, with the expertise and knowledge needed to make genuine progress in line with Council of Europe principles. You've made progress in ensuring that national and international systems work better together, a task that is far from simple. You've also made progress in ensuring better coordination, efficiency, and coherence, all of which are likewise not at all simple, but a prerequisite for progress. The steps you've taken are critical to providing redress to the victims of the ongoing war of aggression. I assure you that the Council of Europe is with you every step of the way going forward. As the title of the conference today suggests, we shall remain united for justice, and together we shall prove successful in ensuring accountability for the ongoing attacks on civilian targets. I thank you very much for your attention. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ovi. And now I would like to invite Mrs. Kolinda Grabar-Kitarovic, the fourth President of the Republic of Croatia, to make a closing remarks.
Thank you. Дякую вам. Dear Mr. Prosecutor General, dear Andrei, dear friends, we all know her as Дівчиця у плавому капотичу, дівчинка в синьому пальті. A fair-haired little girl wearing a bright blue coat, her bright blue eyes filled with tears and terror, holding her mother's hand in a long column of people emerging from the ruins and cellars of Vukovar, where they had spent 3 months as the city was being pounded from all sides, from land, air, and the river Danube, and razed to the ground by the aggressor. She became one of the most powerful symbols of Croatia's homeland war. Along with entire villages razed to the ground, destroyed or damaged centuries of old cultural property, including the siege of the UNESCO heritage protected city of Dubrovnik, whose inhabitants bathed in the cold winter sea and relied on supplies from humanitarian convoys that finally made it through after weeks of hard negotiations. The mutilated bodies of our homeland defenders massacred further even after they had been killed. The mutilated bodies of civilians in the village of Škabrnja and so many other Croatian villages. The bombings and shellings of hospitals, schools, churches. The desecrated statues of even Virgin Mary with her eyes gorged out. So many women, men, and children raped and violated in so many ways. People fleeing for their lives from their homes with nothing but little nylon sacks filled with their most essential belongings that they barely had the time to collect. Lives shattered, families shattered, communities shattered, bridges blown up. These have all become part of our collective memory. During the war in Croatia, we witnessed time and again that deliberate targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure has no military value, but is part of a wider strategy, a campaign of terror with the aim of physical and psychological attrition and ethnic cleansing. And yet, what have we learned from that war in Europe? We are today witnessing much the same in Ukraine, even on a much larger scale. So let me, drawing from Croatia's own experience during the homeland war, end today with 5 key messages that I would like to share with you in my concluding remarks of this most important conference, United for Justice. First, the protection of civilians in conflict is a core obligation. In Croatia, the need to protect civilians was paramount, both during the conflict and its aftermath. Civilians should not be collateral damage in war, let alone be deliberately targeted, and their safety is not only a moral imperative, but a legal one as well. As I have just described, during the Homeland War, we experienced the devastating impact of violence against civilians in occupied territories and far beyond in free parts of Croatia, leading to widespread suffering. Our society, decades after the war, is still healing from the wounds inflicted by that suffering. Civilians are not combatants. They must be treated with dignity, protected from harm, and never seen as targets. Just as Croatia did, Ukraine today is taking and must continue to take every effort to ensure that all measures taken in conflict zones prioritize civilian safety, even under difficult and volatile circumstances. The protection of non-combatants is a cornerstone of international humanitarian law. Second, war crimes accountability must be enforced. One of the most important lessons from Croatia is the need to document violations of international law and war crimes, including those against civilians. Justice for these crimes became an essential part of our process of reconciliation and rebuilding. Justice must be served. And today, decades later, I sadly cannot say that it has been served fully or that it has been served everywhere. In fact, there are still many cases of entire families waiting for closure and justice, partly because of lack of evidence and information on the perpetrators, the whereabouts of the remains of many missing persons from the war, which in many cases the perpetrators moved from one burial site to another to cover their tracks on the trail of terror, and the fact that too many perpetrators are out of the reach of our judiciary. And sadly, it is partly because of demands of the peaceful reintegration process of part of Croatia's territory, where we were asked by the international community to limit the number of potential indictees and crimes committed. Thus, a most important lesson: no crime and no perpetrator should ever be exempt from justice. Ukraine must continue to work with international bodies to document any war crimes or human rights violations against civilians in its territory, including in the temporarily occupied territories, ensuring that those responsible are held accountable in the future. This also implies international investigations in places that are out of reach of the Ukrainian authorities. Third, the importance of the protection of civilians for the reintegration of occupied territories and reconciliation. In Croatia, after police military operations reclaimed occupied territories, one of the most sensitive tasks was the peaceful reintegration of these regions. It was a complex process that required both security and trust-building measures to protect civilians. After military operation and stabilization of the military security and situation, it was essential to work towards reconciliation, re-establishing governance structures, and protecting civilians who had lived under occupation. Ukraine will face similar challenges and needs to prepare for similar efforts, with a focus on rebuilding communities and ensuring the safety and well-being of all citizens. Successful reintegration does not imply just military control of territories. It means rebuilding shattered societies, restoring governance, and getting civilians on board to share the responsibility for the lasting security and stability of their communities. Civilians in occupied areas often experience trauma, displacement, and loss. In Croatia, post-war psychological and social support was vital in helping civilians rebuild their lives. Ukraine should plan for similar support mechanisms, offering psychological aid and fostering resilience within the population. It is important to address the long-term effects of occupation on civilians, especially children, women, and the elderly. Fourth, the importance of international solidarity and advocacy. Just as Croatia sought international support and recognition during its homeland war, Ukraine has every right to continue to rally international solidarity for the protection of its civilians. Pressure on occupying forces and Russia to adhere to international law and respect human rights is essential. Ukraine's diplomatic efforts must continue to highlight the plight of civilians, ensuring that the global community remains engaged and supportive. Fifth, the importance of accountability for NATO and EU integration. In Croatia's case, cooperation with the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, the ICTY, became a condition for NATO and EU membership. Although this process was politically and socially challenging, it was essential for Croatia to confront the past and ensure that justice was served for war crimes committed during the conflict. The handling of reintegrated areas, including how civilians are treated, was closely scrutinized by the international community. Documenting violations, cooperating with international courts, and ensuring justice for civilians will help Ukraine demonstrate its commitment to the rule of law, a crucial factor for future EU and NATO accession. In all this, as we remain united for justice, Croatia stands ready to continue working with Ukraine, sharing not only our best practices, but also the lessons learned from the mistakes made both by us and the international community, as we recognize that international criminal justice is far from perfect. Much work remains to be done. By delivering justice for Ukraine, we are laying the groundwork for a stronger, more effective international criminal justice system, one that will serve as a powerful deterrent to future aggression by making it clear that no one is above the law and that impunity will not go unpunished. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam President, for such a meaningful insights. Ladies and gentlemen, for the final remarks, I would like to invite the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, Andrei Kostyan.
Шановні друзі,
Dear friends, I will start with the words of gratitude. It's always the case that when you are closing up the conference, you are always nervous to make sure you don't forget to thank someone, because indeed to have this event, it is a big job for many people. Therefore, I'll start with the words of gratitude. First of all, I want to thank our staff of the OPG, of everyone who joined in arranging this conference. It's the 7th conference. We mentioned it, and I want to remind all the one, first in Lviv, we mentioned it a lot in March 2023, second for Bucha anniversary. We spoke about atrocities of the invaders in Bucha, and up until now, the Bucha community remains such region with the biggest concentration and types of war crimes that were committed against civilians. The third conference was related to the sexual violence related to conflict. It took place here. It was also in 2023. The fourth conference was dedicated to the accountability against environmental crimes, United for Justice, United for Nature. It also led to dramatic changes in approaches to investigations of those crimes at global level. And today no one is afraid of the word ecocide. Now this crime as ecocide is added to the criminal code in Belgium, and we heard even of the calls from the United Nations General Secretary regarding the criminalization of ecocides in national criminal systems. It's a significant impetus that was born in Ukraine. The fifth conference took place. It was the first conference united for justice that took place outside Ukraine. It took place in Toronto. It was dedicated to the crime against Ukrainian children. It's not just forced deportation that was discussed. We discussed other types of crimes, and it was then that the Minister for Foreign Affairs of Canada, Melanie Joly, officially confirmed that Canada will join the leadership in international coalition to bring back Ukrainian children deported, bring them back to UA. That is now potential, and it's working, although it is a very difficult case. The sixth conference took place in Kyiv, again united for justice, united for heritage. It was a conference dedicated to the crimes against cultural heritage, destruction and pillage and theft of this cultural heritage, this systemic pillage that was conducted and is waged by the aggressor country by trying to claim the cultural heritage of the Ukrainian people and to sell it at illegal black market that has a global dimension. Unfortunately, people buy this knowing that it had been stolen from Ukrainian museums, but they buy it. Coming back to the philosophical discussion as to what is a priority in the world, money or fundamental values for the democratic society. We'll always come back to this discussion because, unfortunately, our world is not perfect. But what we do together with you is we try to unite our efforts to make sure that this world is made better. It's not just flowery words. Now I approach each of you, prosecutors, colleagues, investigators, partners from many countries. We are doing that. We transform, as my friend Vladislav Hamran said at this final session, how do I put it right? We transform words into deeds. Our words are followed by deeds and specific actions, and that is very important because we don't want just to speak. We wouldn't have had the 7th United for Justice conference that we are finalizing today if it were just about useless talk. We wouldn't have this partners, we wouldn't have the welcome remarks by President of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, if these conferences hadn't given such an impetus that we all expect and that we observe. I'd like to thank everyone who helped to make it work. It's our ACA, Atrocity Crimes Advisory Group, it's Council of Europe, it's Georgetown Law, International Criminal Initiative, and EU Project Private Justice financed by European Union, and of course our constant partner advisory mission of the European Union. It's very important. All these conferences were done with the help of the UAM. It's a tradition, and we value this a lot. Because coming back to our work, to the fact that our work is not for years but for decades. It's not a sprint run, it's a marathon. We understand how important it is that assistance to Ukraine is provided constantly, that it doesn't end today or tomorrow, that it continues for years to come, because it will be very difficult for us to undergo all this path. But now we feel the support and help from our colleagues who are with us, who have been with us over these 2.5 years. Yesterday I talked To my colleagues who arrived, it's general prosecutors, ministers of justice, delegations, Eurojust President Karim Khan and his team, our colleague representative of the UN Secretary General Pramila Patten, everyone yesterday was at my office. You know what I thanked my colleagues for? For the fact that they came in 2024.
It was extremely important back in 2022. It is no less dangerous to come to Ukraine in 2024 than in 2022. However, back 2 years ago, we could feel just a crazy energy of support coming from people all over the world. Now, not all people are as supportive as they used to be 2 years ago. However, our people stayed with us, and their aspiration to help and support is no less intensive than in 2022. Besides, we can see our community expanding. More and more people are coming in. Why? It's because each country ends up by understanding that money should not be a cornerstone. What should be in the cornerstone is the rule of law and democracy. No society, no country can be successful if it values money over its core and underlying principles. Each person wants his or her right to life, to dignity, to security, to a restoration of justice be respected. That is why, dear friends, let me express my deepest gratitude to all these speakers, to all the reporters. I'm also grateful to the interpreters, since it is always challenging to interpret in two directions, no matter what the pace of speech is, no matter what the content of speech is. It is very complicated even to stay calm and to sit still for one day, and we all coped with this task successfully because the pace of our life is so that we are in constant move, and we always have this fear of missing out something. In this connection, I would want to thank you for staying with us until the end of the event. And last but not least, it's not only, our task is not only to bring to an end the impunity for committing crimes and to hold liable the perpetrators, but also to build up a system that would not even allow taking actions by
щоб сталий мир панував на нашій землі, на європейській землі та на інших територіях на протязі багатьох десятиріч, як це відбувалося, до речі, після Другої світової війни і після судів в Нюрнберзі. Тому, шановні колеги, дякую за те, що ми об'єднані. Нам треба бути об'єднаними і далі, об'єднаними заради справедливості, яка не просто якась ефемерна наукова субстанція. Про це дуже часто говорить Карим Хан. Це абсолютно реальна річ, яку очікують люди. Дякую вам всім і всім бажаю успіхів в вашій роботі. І, безумовно, будемо готувати наступну зустріч, а ідеї в нас є. Дякую.
Thank you, Mr. Prosecutor General. Ladies and gentlemen, our conference has concluded. Thank you very much for being a part of it. Stay safe and stay united, united for truth, united for freedom, united for justice, wherever it takes. Thank you.